Hello, my name is Patricia. I live in a small annex that's connected to my in-laws' house. My husband, Willie, stays in the main house with his parents, while I live alone in the annex. The annex itself has an interesting history. It was originally built by Willie's grandfather as a little hideaway for himself, but it wasn't very livable at first, more like a storage shed or a place to sit quietly. Over time, I worked hard to make it comfortable, renovating it into a proper living space, though it's only about the size of a regular room. Willie and I had spent the first 4 years of our marriage in a regular apartment. Things were stable then, and we had our own routines. But one day, out of nowhere, his parents told Willie how much they missed him and wanted him to move back home. They cried, hugged him, and acted as if they hadn't seen him in years, even though he visited them often. Willie, who had always been very attached to them, couldn't resist. Moved by their tears and emotional words, he decided to move in with them again. I was stunned. The decision felt sudden, and honestly, I didn't know how to react. Willie and I had met at work years ago. At that time, he was new in the company and worked under me. We dated for 4 years while he was still living at his parents' house, and I think that time just made him and his parents even more emotionally tied to each other. After we married, he finally moved out and lived with me in the apartment. But I soon realized that Willie had been spoiled most of his life. His parents had done almost everything for him, and he had barely touched household chores. When I asked him to help, he would try for a short time, then quickly give up with comments like, "This isn't for me, Patricia. You're better at it, you should just do it." We both had full-time jobs, but mine was more demanding since I held a higher position. I thought dividing chores equally was fair, but convincing Willie to help took so much effort that I often ended up doing everything myself just to avoid the arguments. When I eventually began working from home, Willie was surprised at first. At the start, I thought he had adjusted well, but over time it became clear that he didn't really understand that working from home meant actually working. A few years later, his parents suddenly showed up at our apartment and announced they wanted to live closer to him. Their reunion was emotional again. Lots of hugging, lots of, "We miss you so much." I felt out of place, as if I wasn't even part of the picture. Eventually, I gave in and agreed to move into their home. The day we moved in, my mother-in-law smiled warmly at me and said, "Thank you for taking care of Willie. From now on, I will take care of him. You just handle everything else." At first, I thought this meant fewer responsibilities for me. But very soon, I realized her version of taking care of him meant doing only things for him, cooking his favorite meals, washing and ironing his clothes, polishing his shoes, buying him personal items. Meanwhile, all the general household work, cooking for everyone else, doing everyone else's laundry, cleaning the house, fell to me. And this was on top of my full-time remote job. I was exhausted. Willie was happy, his parents were happy, and I was invisible. One afternoon, while I was cleaning, my father-in-law approached me hesitantly and asked if I could help with some expenses. I was confused, so he explained, "It's hard to ask Willie for money. He works so hard, you know." This was baffling because when we'd lived in the apartment, Willie and I had agreed to split living costs. But even then, he often pushed me to pay for extra things, alcohol, expensive food, clothes. If I refused, he would sulk and call me stingy. Still, I tried to live peacefully. Willie didn't interfere with my work much, but his mother certainly did. She barged into my workspace, tugged at my clothes to get my attention, and demanded I do chores immediately. It was impossible to focus. I complained to Willie, expecting him to defend her. Surprisingly, he listened and said he'd talk to her. But his solution was not what I expected. He suggested I move into the annex on their property. Half joking, I asked if I could tear the annex down and build something new. He casually said, "Sure, you can do whatever you want." So, I took him at his word. I began renovating the annex, changing wallpapers, cleaning, and making it cozy. Willie never came to see the progress, not once. Slowly, I realized he had no plan to live there with me. Once I moved in, it was as if I didn't exist. His family would go out to eat without telling me. His mother would plan gatherings that I was not invited to. It was clear she wanted me gone. Still, living in the annex gave me freedom. No interruptions, no constant orders from my mother-in-law. I even put in new locks so no one could enter without my permission. It felt like my own little sanctuary. But I could sense that my mother-in-law wasn't going to let me enjoy this peace for long. I was reaching my breaking point. I found myself at a turning point in life, unsure what my next move would be as I settled into the annex I had spent weeks renovating. I had put so much effort into making it feel like a little home of my own, fresh wallpaper, clean floors, cozy furniture. But even as I tried to enjoy this quiet space, it became more and more obvious that my mother-in-law was determined to drive me away. She didn't start with outright fights. Instead, she used small, petty tactics, things that could be passed off as accidents if anyone called her out. On garbage day, she would leave trash right in front of my cabin instead of at the collection site. Other times, she would host big barbecues in the garden, inviting everyone except me. I could smell the delicious grilled meat drifting straight into my annex, but I was never asked to join. It was like a constant reminder that I didn't belong. At first, I just laughed to myself at how much energy she was wasting on these childish games, but then came the day she called me to the main house. She said she had some leftover meat and potatoes for me. Something about her voice made me suspicious, but I went anyway. When I arrived, the house was strangely quiet. She was alone in the living room. She didn't offer me any food. Instead, she pulled out a single sheet of paper and set it on the table in front of me with a little dramatic flair. It was a divorce paper. I instantly understood her real reason for calling me over. She wanted me gone, and she knew Willie would follow whatever she told him to do. All she needed was my signature. Once it was signed, all it would take was a quick trip to the city court to make it official. With a smug smile, she said, "Isn't it about time you gave up? There's no reason for you and Willie to stay married anymore. Get out, you freeloading, unemployed woman." I was stunned, not hurt, but impressed by how bold she was, and instead of arguing, I smiled brightly and said, "Thank you so much. I'm going to the city court right now." Then I grabbed the paper before she could change her mind. She clearly expected me to beg or cry. My sudden enthusiasm left her speechless. Within hours, I had filed the papers. When it was done, I went back to tell her the divorce was official. I also told her she could do whatever she wanted with the annex I had fixed up, tear it down, use it, whatever. She looked surprised at how calm I was, but she still smiled like she had won. Even so, she awkwardly wished me luck when I said goodbye. Willie and his father seemed shocked too. "Are you going? What will we do without Patricia?" they asked. I simply thanked them for letting me stay in the annex and explained there was no point in staying now that the marriage was over. That same week, I moved into a luxury apartment I had been considering for a while. It was bright, spacious, and, most importantly, mine. I could decorate it exactly how I wanted. I felt lighter, free. Not long after, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Her voice sounded stiff at first as she said, "Patricia." I answered cheerfully, "Hi, how's everything going with the cabin?" She hesitated, then switched to a more serious tone. Apparently, Willie had told her that I was giving his father $5,000 every month. I confirmed it, explaining that despite what she used to say about me being an unemployed freeloader, I was very much employed. She seemed shocked. She admitted she thought I had stopped working years ago. I told her the truth. I hadn't just kept working. I had moved on to become president of a new company, one that was leading the way in remote work systems. There was a long pause before she asked about my salary. I casually said it was around $3 million, not bothering to explain further. It wasn't exactly true, but I didn't feel like sharing the details. That's when she finally admitted the real reason for her call. She wanted money. Her husband, my father-in-law, had lost his job and kept it a secret. They had been getting by with the $5,000 I'd been sending, but now they needed more. Suddenly, his earlier, "poor me" talk made sense. Back when I lived there, he had acted embarrassed to ask Willie for money and hinted at me helping instead. I now realized it was a planned move to get me to pay more without directly saying so. Looking back, I didn't mind too much at the time because living in the annex gave me peace and privacy. But now, as a divorced woman, I owed them nothing. I told her plainly, "We're not family anymore. You were the one who wanted me gone. There's no reason for me to come back." She tried to backtrack. "That's not true. To me and Willie, you're still family. Please come back to us." I almost laughed. They only wanted me back because they thought I could support them financially. But Willie was still the same man, avoiding responsibilities, saying, "I can't do it," whenever things got hard. He had no promotions, no pay raises, and now, with his father unemployed and his mother not working, they couldn't afford their big house. In the end, they had to sell it. The three of them moved into the tiny annex I once lived in, a space perfect for one person, but now cramped for three. As for me, I haven't thought much about them since. My new life is quiet, peaceful, and completely my own. I spend money on myself now. Instead of sending $5,000 away every month, I feel lighter, freer, and happier than I ever did when I was married. And I have no intention of ever going back.